At any given moment in our lives, we can experience pain. Life loves to throw us curveballs constantly, and the event that causes suffering for one person may not even cause the blink of an eye of another person. And that's because stress is mainly always a very subjective thing, but that's a whole entire other episode. But what's the major difference here in between one scenario and the other? The difference can be seen in each person's response. So what is that telling us? This tells us that each event in our life that happens to us, circumstance, situation, whatever the case may be, is actually something that's neutral. And it's our response that dictates the way the outcome appears within our story. Let me use an example from my own story. When I was 8, I was shot in the eye with a BB gun. This accident left me without vision in my right eye for probably the rest of my life until technology comes about to fix it, and also wearing a prosthetic shell that goes over my real eye to make it look normal rather. So obviously this event is really, really awful for an 8-year-old to experience and for an 8-year-old's family to experience. When it first happened, it obviously wasn't great. It was a really traumatizing experience, and yeah, there was suffering. But as I moved away from the experience and as I got older, I began to explain the event as not only the worst thing to ever happen to me, but also the best thing to ever happen to me. And now, as a almost 25-year-old, the further that I've gotten from the event, I actually describe it as the best thing that has ever happened to me. I could have stayed in the victim thinking of why in the world did this have to happen to me? But as a determined 8-year-old, I decided that that mentality was not for me. Yeah, I could have totally stayed in the victim mentality and still could have treated it as the worst event that has ever happened and woe is me, why did this happen? But then I would have just stayed there and I couldn't have used the action and the event to make good in my life, and I also would have never been moved to action if I stayed in that mentality. I figured, my life is moving forward, so why shouldn't I? Let me note that sometimes it does take time to relieve the suffering. Yes, feel it and let yourself move through it, because in actuality, when you let yourself feel the suffering, you're more likely to move through it way quicker than if you had just squashed it down and bottled it up. When it comes to the pain and suffering that we live in our lives, it's less about the suffering that you're living and feeling in the moment and more about looking at it from an objective perspective. Life is so transient. Things are constantly moving, and so looking at it from that perspective helps you understand why there's a rhyme to the reason of this event happening. It's hard to hear this in the moment of such pain and anguish, that everything happens for a reason and that every event, occurrence, situation has a purpose for us in our lives. But realizing this can allow for the event to have a positive impact on your life rather than the negatively perceived one. As Tony Robbins says, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. You may be asking yourself how I moved myself forward and how others, like you, can do the same. So I've come up with a couple of different questions that you can ask yourself to help you reframe these negative or neutral events into positive ones in your life. You can ask yourself, what was this intending to teach me? What is a positive reframe of this event happening? What is a possible purpose for this in the course of my life? And when another painful event happens to you in your life, ask yourself, where can I find the good in this situation? And how can I react differently to this pain? I probably wouldn't be able to explain how blessed I feel for my accident. I firmly believe that I wouldn't be half the person I am today, or even a coach, if it wasn't for this accident happening in my life. I realize that it is what has made me exactly who I am today, and there was a major purpose and impact for it to make in my life. I would dare say the same is true for some of your worst events in your life, because there is good in absolutely everything. It might not be believable in the moment, but there is good. And there is always something to learn, and there is always some way to grow, no matter what situation you're in. And really, if you think about it, it could always be worse. The situation could always have something worse, or you could live an even worse life and be in completely different circumstances. The life that you live and the world that we live in is constantly moving. It is so transient. And you know what? It's also constantly moving forward. So remaining to keep your energy forward and intentionally moving your energy forward can help you live a little bit less of a regretful and guilty feeling life. I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. If you liked today's episode, make sure to share it and pass it along to your friends, and take a second to like it as well. There are new videos every single week, so I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Carpe diem, friends.